The bill to release the Epstein files arrived on Trump's desk today, and by the time that you're watching this, he may have already signed it. But what we end up getting, it might not satisfy people who want to get to the bottom of this. And that's unfortunately not going to be that surprising for a lot of people, because we've already gone through 5 months of feet dragging, deflection, diversion, distraction, and denial from Trump and the Republicans. But then after realizing he was going to lose the vote and that was going to be so embarrassing, he told Republicans, okay, vote for it. And every single lawmaker in the House except one, Louisiana Republican Clay Higgins, voted in favor. And then, and I was shocked by this, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer fast-tracked passage of the bill by a procedure known as unanimous consent. Right? And basically that meant as soon as the House bill reached the Senate, it automatically passed without any debate, delay, or revisions. And for that to happen, it's not that everyone needs to vote yes, it just requires nobody to object. Though it also meant that senators didn't have to go on the record with a yes or a no vote like the House did. And actually, when Schumer was asked why he opted for that trade-off, he explained,
because we want to get this done. And if they would have been allowed amendments, they could have delayed it. And if you have amendments, guess where it goes? Not to the president's desk, to the House. And the House, who knows what they do with it.
And actually, according to reports, ever since the discharge petition setting all this in motion passed, White House aides had been trying to get the Senate to amend the bill when it arrived, with them reportedly encouraging senators to frame any slowdown as responsible oversight and circulating talking points to vulnerable Republicans. And then, despite House Speaker Mike Johnson urging the Senate to amend it, yesterday Majority Leader John Thune just didn't put up a fight. And as far as why, you had Republican Thomas Massie giving his opinion on why his own party had such a change of heart.
They realized this could jeopardize the majority if they took the side, literally the side of pedophiles and rapists.
And with this, we had a Trump official saying that once Trump got it, he'd sign it. And a big thing is that from the moment Trump signs it, the clock starts ticking and the Department of Justice will have 30 days to release the full files. So that then gets us into muddy waters. But it's unclear whether they intend to use up all that time or just rip it off like a Band-Aid sooner. But with that, if you ask critics, the DOJ really shouldn't need any more time to redact sensitive victims' information because they've had close to 10 months now to do that. You know, you're even seeing Republicans publicly just wanting to get this over with, such as Tom Tillis.
Release the damn files, period. I don't care about how the sausage is made. I just want it out in the open for everybody to consume.
But still, you've got just so many people bracing to see what else Trump and the people around him are going to do to possibly protect him, right? Because by my count, there are at least 5 potential moves that Trump could make in the coming weeks that people are anticipating. First, he can and will go back on the offensive with, for example, a White House official saying, the Democrats are going to come to regret this. Let's start with Stacey Plaskett. You think we're not going to make a scene of this? Or with that, referring to Stacey Plaskett, who's a Democrat and non-voting delegate from the U.S. Virgin Islands, whose name popped up in the most recent Epstein email stone. And that showed that during a 2019 Oversight Committee hearing with Trump's former lawyer Michael Cohen, she was having a text exchange with Jeffrey Epstein. And so you had critics latching onto that and accusing her of secretly being fed questions in real time by a pedophile sex trafficker. But then yesterday she defended herself on the House floor, claiming that at the time she didn't know that he was being investigated and that he texted her, not the other way around. Explaining that after a live clip of her went viral, she got flooded with texts from friends and foes alike, and one of those people was Jeffrey Epstein, her then constituent.
I don't need to get advice on how to question anybody from any individual. I have sought information from confidential informants, from murderers, from other individuals, because I want the truth. Not because I need them to tell me what to say.
But still, you had House Republicans trying to censure her over it, which actually would have removed her from the Intelligence Committee. But that motion got shot down last night in a vote of 209 to 214. Or with it mostly being along party lines, though 3 Republicans joined Democrats and 3 more voted present. Though that's not to say that there wasn't some heated debate on the House floor.
Standing against a convicted predator's influence in our proceedings is not partisan. It's basic decency. We cannot pretend this didn't happen.
This seems to me to be one more pathetic effort to distract and divert attention from the fact that the president's name appeared more than 1,000 times already in the small fraction of material released on Epstein.
But moving on from that, for now, you have Trump's second option being to just not release the files in open defiance of the law that he himself signed, which I would say it would be an extreme action, though not totally unprecedented. I mean, we've seen this administration ignore judges, at least temporarily, and refuse to spend funds that were appropriated by Congress for a specific use. Plus, Trump has broad criminal immunity, and he can pardon anyone he wants, so there's arguably not a whole lot preventing him from just breaking the law. Though given the number of options here, I don't think he goes this route, at least not immediately, and at least Thomas Massie, he doesn't seem too worried about that possibility right now.
They are criminally liable at the DOJ and FBI if they don't release these files. This is a law.
And that brings us to option number 3, which is for Trump's DOJ to block certain documents from getting released, citing ongoing investigations. Because when you know it, this bill, it has a little caveat, which is that it allows the DOJ to withhold or redact any records that would jeopardize an active federal investigation or ongoing prosecution. And again, oh my gosh, the shocking timing. Last Friday, Trump had Pam Bondi open investigations into Epstein's relationship with 3 Democrats, Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, and Reid Hoffman. But also, the bill states that any withholding of material related to an ongoing investigation must be be narrowly tailored and temporary. And so with that, it's unclear how much time that would actually buy them. And again, you have Massey not seeming overly concerned about that either.
Even if they start 10 investigations, there's no way they're going to cover up the crimes that have been perpetrated on 1,000 victims.
But then next up, the fourth option is to release the files, but redact the parts that are embarrassing to Trump and his allies. And, while the bill explicitly prohibits the DOJ from doing that, it's unclear what tools lawmakers actually have to ensure that rule is followed. And while I personally think it's going to be a mixture of options 1, 3, and 4, there's also option 5, which is to just dump the files unredacted all at once. Right, in the hopes that the media and just people in general will be flooded with so many revelations about people whose name are not Donald J. Trump that minor mentions of Trump just kind of get overshadowed. But of course, with that, he is the sitting president of the United States, so he'd likely be at the center of any conversation, especially because in this power-hungry and billionaire world, so many people are connected. And again, like I've talked about, with the way that Donald Trump has handled this, no matter what gets released, people are going to believe that there's more, right? Whether there is or there isn't, because he has acted this entire time like the most guilty, sketchy person ever. I mean, he fought this thing tooth and nail, put his hand up Mike Johnson's asshole to puppeteer him, to roadblock everything. More and more time passes. You've got more and more people saying, okay, it feels like they're buying time to remove things, to have some sort of conspiracy. You've got Mark Epstein talking about he heard that there's a facility where they're removing information. And in the meantime, you've got a lot of people like Massey saying, they're not going to be satisfied until some real shit comes out because he knows that it exists.
We will know when the Epstein files are released because men will go to prison. I know through the victims' lawyers, there are at least 20 credible accusations of rape and sex trafficking that have been relayed to the FBI, and they've done nothing about it.
Whether the Epstein issue hangs over Trump's head or not, you have many feeling like this past week alone, it's already shattered his myth of political invincibility. Or before this, it appeared like he had an iron grip on his party. They followed him, he didn't follow them. But now you're hearing more and more talk, and this includes in MAGA circles, of, is he a lame duck? Right? And as we've seen with these situations with Tucker Carlson, Nick Fuentes, Candace Owens, Marjorie Taylor Greene, some on the right, they're maneuvering themselves to come out on top in a post-Trump future. Because, I know it's easy to forget because he's just on every screen every single day, but he's not going to be there forever. He's almost 80 years old, and he's not exactly the healthiest human specimen. Though personally, I think it's more likely we enter a post-Trump future because of his McDonald's order rather than, Republican politicians getting a spine. I truly think many just want to be able to fall back in line. But we even saw that with Elon Musk. One of the reasons the Epstein situation got to this point is Elon Musk blasted Trump about the Epstein files publicly. And after jabs left and right, he was at that Saudi dinner last night. I think Marjorie Taylor Greene would love to be in his good graces despite, Trump attacking her, even though she's been like one of his biggest warriors over these years. But whatever the case may be, I think we'll get a lot more insight very soon. Because sooner than later, there's going to be that vote around the Affordable Care Act subsidies. And while a big thing was that Marjorie Taylor Greene broke with him on that, it's also been reported that some other Republican lawmakers want to compromise with Democrats on the issue. Though as far as Trump, he doesn't seem like he's budging. And a big thing is if those subsidies expire, premiums are going to skyrocket for over 20 million people. And of course, that's on top of the inflation situation and the dire state of the economy in general. But in the meantime, as we wait to see what happens, one, I'd love to know your thoughts, opinions, and reactions here, but also two, what do you think is going to happen with the Epstein files? Or whether it be something to do with the 5 options I talked about or even something else. And then there's more we're going to dive into in a minute, but first let me say I am convinced that most protein bars, they were made by people who hate joy. Right? They taste like drywall, regret, and false advertising, and yet we keep pretending that they're fuel. But Equip Foods, today's sponsor, and their Prime bars, they actually taste good. They're packed with 20 grams of pasture-raised protein from grass-fed beef and collagen, the good stuff. No whey, no soy, and definitely none of those what even is that ingredients. The sweetness, real dates and honey. The fats, grass-fed tallow and cocoa butter, no seed oils, no mystery sludge. Your gut health, covered. Every bar has colostrum, nature's superfood for recovery and immunity. And unlike half the industry, Equip tests everything. No pesticides, heavy metals, or microplastics. What's listed is what's in it. I use Prime bars after workouts, when traveling, or, just when I'm trying to pretend that I have my life together between meals. You may have noticed they've upgraded the look, right? They kept the same clean ingredients. And if you love peanut butter like I do, I say the peanut butter Prime bar is the move. And hey, if you've been on the fence about this, get in now, because Equip's giving you VIP early access to Equip's Black Friday sale a full week before everyone else. Just scan the QR code or head to equipfoods.com/Phil and use code Phil for the best deal I've seen. 30% off site-wide or 40% off a subscription. But then next up today in other news, the internet called this months ago. The singer David is now a suspect in the murder of Celeste Rivas. Or because back in September, you had the LAPD saying they found a body in his impounded Tesla, which was at a tow yard in Hollywood. And those remains were later identified as 15-year-old Celeste, who actually had been reported missing from Riverside County back in April of 2024. And the details are horrifying. The body was reportedly not intact when it was found. It was also said to be severely decomposed, suggesting she had been dead inside of the car for an extensive period of time before she was found. And as all this was happening, the cause of death wasn't clear. there were no official suspects, and David's rep said that he was cooperating with the investigation. But the internet, they jumped on it, with many quickly believing that David was responsible. And I mean, people were posting nonstop, breaking down their theories with this case. Right? Among other things, you had a lot of people freaked out by the fact that he and Celeste appear to have matching tattoos that said shh, and by the fact that one of his most streamed songs is literally called Romantic Homicide. But all of that, it brings us to now where you have multiple outlets reporting that the LAPD has identified him as a suspect. Right? A source telling NBC LA that he hasn't been cooperative in the investigation. And actually other outlets added that he apparently had never at any point been cooperating despite what his reps had been saying. Well, right now they believe that Celeste's death happened sometime in spring and that David likely had help in dismembering and disposing of her body. Though with all this, I'll say while multiple reports have since confirmed that he is considered a suspect by LAPD sources, you also had TMZ noting that there is no paperwork officially classifying him as one. Right? Investigators are reportedly just looking at him as one. But also with that, you had sources saying that the LAPD is not close to making any arrests. We have no clue if there's any other suspects outside of David, and technically the medical examiner hasn't even ruled this a homicide yet. But also as we wait to see what happens there, we've learned a few more details about Celeste's disappearance. Right? Her brother says that the family was aware that Celeste knew David, and when she disappeared, she was apparently on her way to see a movie with him, but just never came back. But for now, we'll have to wait to see what comes from all this, and in the meantime, of course, I'd love to know your thoughts. But then, moving on to our next story today, President Trump, he just so badly wants to be friends with Mohammed Bonesaw, the crown prince of Saudi Arabia. Right? And some of the ways that he's trying to accomplish that include he wants to give the kingdom access to America's most powerful fighter jets, he upgraded the country to a major non-NATO ally, and he ran cover for MBS when he was asked about the assassination of journalist Jamal Khashoggi at the White House. Right? And going into the details on these, earlier in the week, you had Trump announcing that he intends to grant Saudi Arabia's request to buy F-35 fighter planes. And it's important to understand that these are America's most advanced, and in the Middle East, actually only Israel has them, or I guess for now. Also with that, I'll say Israel wasn't happy for a few reasons. One, they still don't have good relations with Saudi Arabia, despite failed US efforts to change that. With that leading to the IDF being concerned that their current air superiority over other Arab countries could be eroded. And two, this is being seen as a clear sign that the US is moving closer to Saudi Arabia, which is a red flag for Israel. And to be fair to them, they're hardly the only ones that have issues about this sale. But even our own Pentagon raised concerns that despite Saudi Arabia's status as a major buyer of US arms, we don't give them our most advanced stuff for a reason. I mean, one report by the Defense Intelligence Agency found that if the kingdom got F-35s, China would be able to access the sensitive tech in the jet. And actually, it's because of these concerns that Trump's plan to sell these to MBS might not end up actually happening. Right? And in particular, while he has a pretty good hold of his party outside of Epstein things, there are a good number of Republican lawmakers who think that a sale of these jets should be contingent on Saudi Arabia recognizing Israel and normalizing relations. At the very least, this announcement from Trump, it was seen as a way to butter up MBS before he showed up to the White House yesterday. And there, a big thing is you saw one reporter just going straight forward, asking Mr. Bonesaw about the assassination of Jamal Khashoggi and touching on the families of 9/11 victims who have long blamed Saudi Arabia for being partially responsible for the attack. But before he could even talk about it, Trump intervened.
You're mentioning somebody that was extremely controversial. A lot of people didn't like that gentleman that you're talking about. Whether you like him or didn't like him, things happen. But he knew nothing about it, and we can leave it at that. You don't have to embarrass our guest by asking a question like that.
Now, with that said, despite Trump protecting his boo, MBS did answer the question.
You allow me to answer. I feel painful about the families of 9/11 in America, but we have to focus on reality based on CIA documents and based on a lot of documents that Osama bin Laden, he used Saudi people in that event for one main purpose, is to destroy this relation, to destroy the American-Saudi